everyone, and welcome to another video here at Sev's Garage. We are continuing work on the Prelude today. In the last episode, we got the engine out of this engine bay here so that we can make room for the new JDM H23A. But before that can happen, this thing is all sorts of a mess, and so is the transmission that we're still needing to use. So we're going to go ahead and get everything ready and cleaned up. I did order a bunch of stuff that I'm waiting on, so I'm not wasting any time in getting everything ready while that stuff is coming in. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing I'm going to do is pull this wire harness and the starter and engine mount and all that so I can separate the engine and transmission before I power wash this thing. It's disgusting. It's caked in all sorts of stuff. And like I said in the last video, I don't really want to put dirty stuff back in. I always like working on stuff that's clean, and especially if I'm doing a job of this magnitude, I try to make everything better than I found it. So I'm going to get the engine bay clean, I'm going to get the transmission clean, and when the new engine goes on, if there's any leaks, we'll be able to tell that they're new leaks. So let's go ahead, put you on a time lapse, and get it going. Went ahead and got the engine harness pulled. I always like piling everything up in sections so I know what goes with what, and it makes organizing a lot easier. Show the engine over here. This thing is gross. Look at this thing. Caked in all sorts of grime. The harness is also just coated in oil and stuff, so I'm gonna see if I can get that cleaned up a little bit as well. But now I'm gonna do starter, engine mount, and see if I can separate these two. So let's get at it. Alright, we got these things separated, and of course we got more oil leaking everywhere. This, to me, looks like an aftermarket or rebuilt torque converter. It's got some Sharpie written paint marker number on it. I'm not going to take it off just because I don't want to deal with the seal and the fluid in the torque converter if I can help it. I'm kind of thinking how I'm going to go about cleaning this. It's got a lot of little holes and stuff. So power washing, even though it would give the best results and be quickest, may not be the way. I might just hit it with the greaser, let it sit, brush it, do that a couple of times, and then throw away the sheet. That's why I use this stuff. It's like a thick cardboard, and it protects the work surface underneath it. And when it's disgusting, I just grab the whole thing and throw it away. I buy these giant rolls for it. It's supposed to be like floor covering. So I buy these giant rolls at Home Depot for like 30-40 bucks or something, and then I put them underneath cars or when I'm doing engine swaps and stuff like that to protect work surfaces and have something that's a nice, easy to get rid of sacrificial layer. But yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it yet, but I do know that I need to get, let me turn that light off, I need to get this engine out of here and this and that put together. I still don't know what I'm doing with this. There's a high probability that this is going to end up just getting tossed and recycled after I take what I need from it. I probably will have to swap over the crank position sensor because this is an OBD2 car and it's going to need it. There is a way to wire it up at the ECU so that the cam sensor and crank sensor are the same signal and it doesn't throw a check engine light for that stuff when you're doing a JDM engine swap, which I don't know if the oil pump on this will accept that sensor yet. So depending if that does work or not, I may need to do it. And if I do, I will show you. But yeah, I'm going to figure out how to clean this thing, get stuff going, and start putting stuff together. Alright, I probably should have filmed the process, but I was busy doing some heavy lifting. But we got the old engine and transmission off of the rolling table so that the new engine can go on there. This is the old block, which I might still need to steal some components off of, so I'm going to keep that around. But the auto transmission, holy crap is this thing heavy, man. I mean, it's still, torque converter is still full of fluid and stuff. But man, talk about that thing being a brick. So this is going to get power washed now so that it can be ready to get mated to the engine. Engine's going to go up on table. This guy's going to go up on table. And then we'll roll this under the car and get it up in the car and get it closer to running. You know, get this thing one step closer to going back to its customer. Well, to the customer, the owner. And yeah, getting out of here because I need my space back. This thing is looking insane, even after just a simple power wash. Haven't even hit it with any degreaser or anything yet. So that's the next step, is letting it soak in degreaser for a couple minutes, using a brush to agitate it, power wash it a couple more times, and then dry it out. Look at this thing. Again, not perfect, but damn does it look better. So now I'm going to use some of the compressed air, blow off all the electrical connectors, nook crannies, anything like that, as much as I can, just to make sure it's as dry as it can be before I put that on there. And then with that guy, and yeah, then this whole thing will roll under here and bolt in. So let's get to it. Alright, that was only slightly terrifying to do by myself, but we got the engine and transmission up on the table now. I think I'm going to take off the intake manifold just to make it easier to get up into the engine bay, and then mate these two together. I'm not going to bolt the flywheel to the torque converter until it's up in the car, and I can rotate it and do it a lot more easily from underneath. But I'll at least get a couple of bolts to put them together and then be able to mount it in the car. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off and compare it to the intake manifold that was on the car. Again, the engine that came out was an F20B, not the factory H22. So I'd like to use the H series manifold if I can. I just got to see how the emissions components and whatnot are gonna mount to this. But for now, I think I'm gonna just take that off, put them together, and throw it in the car. And we have an engine and transmission. That was a pain to do by myself. This thing, I swear, weighs more than the engine. It's crazy how heavy that thing is. But doing stuff like this, it's really helpful to have two people, and I didn't have that, so I'm using all sorts of different blocks of woods and stuff. To try to get everything lined up perfectly, I even ended up using a little plastic trim removal tool to have that at an angle and be able to do micro adjustments. You know, do what you can, and, you know, try to work smarter, not harder. But if you're a single lonesome person like me, then yeah, things get interesting. So finally got everything together, went ahead and got the starter and the engine mount bracket on this side, just to have everything on this side locked in and ready to go up. And then I was looking at, this is the adapter that goes from the motor mount. This is where the motor mount hole goes, and then these two go onto the engine block side, and it goes like that, and it lines right up. But on this guy, the holes aren't the same distance. So this is where we start getting into little nooks and crannies of doing an engine swap and trial and error stuff. I'm very well versed on doing stuff on B series and Hondas with, you know, like EK Civics, DC Integras, DA Integras, EF, stuff like that. Don't mess too much with the Prelude, so this is a learning experience even for me, but I know kind of what to look out for because I have done so many of these on other Honda chassis of roughly the same generation. So I'm probably going to have to remove the plastic covers, which is okay because I haven't torqued this yet. Remove plastic covers, remove this piece, make sure that that's the same one. If not, try to find the adapter that goes on top of this to go to the proper mount. But yeah, going to try to knock that out. But before that, I'm disgusting. I'm gonna go clean up and we'll pick this back up in the morning. All right, we're back at it. Next day, a little bit cleaner, not by much. Prelude's still up, working on the engine over here. So this is the old engine that came out of it, and here you can see why. These are the teeth of the timing belt. They got shredded. This was an old timing belt, never got taken care of. This is an F20B, not the original engine for the car. Not sure if it ever got a timing belt before it was put in, but this is what I needed to get out of it, which is the mount for the engine. You'll see that the distance here and the distance here is very different. So I need to install the different one on there. I went ahead and already got this all torn apart. So I'm gonna go ahead, get it all back together and see if we can get it in the car. And the engine is ready. Went ahead and swapped out the crank pulley for the dual rib one. This one was a single. Swapped out the engine block mount for the engine mount bracket. Now this guy lines up like it's supposed to. It's in that hole. Let me see if I can get you in there. There you go. Also remove the alternator. Usually the Japanese alternators have a different plug on the back of them than the US market alternators. I would like to run as much of the components out of this engine as I can, just because it's lower mileage and a lot cleaner than what came out of it. The AC bracket looks like it's the same, so I'm going to keep that on there because it's in nicer shape. I'm going to have to see if the alternator bracket is the same or if it's different. I would like to retain the upper exhaust manifold. I do have new gaskets for that, and then the rest of the exhaust would be what was on the car. I've got a powder coated valve cover that's getting done up by Bullseye Customs, local guys that help me out all the time. So that will be getting done soonish. I'm going to put the engine in without the intake manifold just to make stuff easier. Went ahead and replaced both of the axle seals. These were the disgusting old ones, so they're going in the trash. Cleaned up some more of the bottom of the transmission while I was at it because it's still pretty gross down there. As I said earlier, the starter's gone in just so that this motor mount could go on. And yeah, it's looking a lot more like an engine. I went ahead and ordered a couple little odds and ends that I need. I'm gonna have to source a new sensor for that because both this engine and that engine, that sensor was broken on. I believe this is the oil pressure switch. And I believe this one down here is the knock sensor. So I'm gonna have to locate one of those. And then I voted against transferring the oil pump and all of the components needed for the crankshaft position sensor onto this engine just because the oil in this didn't look that great. The wear on the cam caps wasn't that good, and I don't know what kind of condition that oil pump is in. This oil pump looked pretty good. Cam caps on this looked pretty good. This did look like it sat for a bit and it had a little bit of sludge in it, but the oil pump itself I think is in better shape. New ones are difficult to get and expensive, especially if you're just going for an OEM replacement. For whatever reason, the Prelude and H series don't have a whole lot of aftermarket support. Even though this is a 2000 or 2001 and this Integra is a 91, it's a lot easier to get engines for the B series in the Integras than it is the H series. They just weren't as popular, weren't in as many cars, and I guess they didn't continue making parts for as long. So yeah, we're about to try to shove this in there and see how it goes. Wish me luck. Alright, we are in the engine bay of the Prelude. We can see here an axle boot was torn and blown up and spewed stuff everywhere. It's all over evap system stuff, wiring harness stuff, behind the motor mount, so I'm going to be taking those out. These are all getting replaced anyway. So first thing first, get all the mounts out and then soak this in degreaser, brush it off, clean it up, and get this bay ready. And of course I've got some more of the floor liner down here just so that it's easy cleanup. Once I'm done, that will catch all the gunk, roll that up, throw it in the garbage, and just make my life that much easier. So that stuff is great. If if you got a shop space, or even if just your driveway, you know, it's concrete or whatever, you don't want it to get super dirty, that stuff is great. So I'm gonna get to it, and let's get this thing cleaned up. Well, after a couple of minutes of elbow grease, this is looking a lot better. It's not perfect by any means, so I didn't go super crazy getting in the little crevices and stuff like that, or like this stuff is super sticky up underneath the frame rail. I just went ahead and cleaned it pretty good. You know, it's not perfect, but enough to know if we have new leaks happening. You know, if a CV boot blows up on the new axles or something, we'll be able to tell if it's new stuff or old stuff, since this stuff was caked. So yeah. All right, we have engine back in. So it wasn't too bad. I had to fight it just a little bit. With this being an automatic transmission, it's really big on the backside, and where the cross member is was fighting me just a little bit. And then this engine mount is really dumb because it's got a little lip underneath it, and the bracket also has a lip where it kind of like catches onto each other, and it was kind of a pain in the ass to get in. But we got it. It's a little teeter-tottery right now, which is a bit terrifying, just because it's only got the two side mounts and it doesn't have the front and rear ones. I'm waiting for new mounts to come in for this thing, so I'm just gonna let it be like this. I don't think it's gonna fail, and if it does, it's all encased in metal, so whatever. These mounts aren't staying anyway. I'm gonna start plugging stuff in just a little bit to get this more back together. I did put the AC compressor on just so it wasn't kind of hanging on by the hoses and not messing those up, because I'm sure that these are discontinued and hard to find. So I'm gonna just start plugging away little stuff, radiator, alternator, belts, etc., and getting this to look more like an engine little by little. But hey, doing the thing. So I'll get back at it and catch up with you in a little bit. Underneath the car, I'm getting the ball rolling. I went ahead and got all of the bolts that hold the flex plate to the torque converter done up, and you'll see they've got a little dot on them. I always mark them once I've torqued them. I also like to use a little blue Loctite on anything that spins, just to make sure it's not going to come off. Next up, the bottom of this thing is still pretty gross, especially the transmission here. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all that up, and then install the shift cable and get all this closed up. All right, we've got shift cable back in, we've got the cross brace installed, we've got all of that locked in place. Half shaft is in, axle shafts are in both sides. We have this one right in there. Got the rest of the suspension all back together on both ends, and now I'm about to install the front subframe here. I did install a new motor mount on that guy. I've got another, this is the rear mount here. I'm waiting for the two side mounts to come in, but making good progress on this thing. The pile of parts back here is getting smaller and smaller, so that's always a good sign. I have to clean up this wire harness before it goes back in, because the later half of it towards the transmission is just covered in oil. So I want to make sure that I put clean stuff back on. And yeah, I think next up will be this guy, and then rear transmission mount to at least get this engine from being so teeter-tottery. And then I'll do the two side ones once it's a little bit more settled, and continue working on this thing. See where we get. More parts have been flowing in. We've got the two motor mounts that we were waiting on. Got a couple of belts because the old ones were all cracked and terrible. You can see them here. They're all sorts of gross and cracking. So we got that. We got a handful of small OEM little parts, VTEC solenoid gasket, oil dipstick or O-ring. We've got fuel line crush washers. We've got some hardware for the mid shaft, and also got stuff back from powder coat. I'm gonna wait to show you that one, but look at how amazing this turned out. This is a high temp silver for the heat shield. That's gonna look great. I'm gonna see if I can find some zinc coated hardware to hold that in place so that we got it all looking nice and spiffy. We've also got subframe in place, exhaust back in place. We've got the two other motor mounts already in and loosely bolted in place, so we can still have play when the two side ones go back in place. And yeah, got that wheel back on that other side, and we're slowly making really good progress on this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead, put you on a time lapse, do the two side mounts, and see how far we can get. I'm hoping to make this thing a roller. Hold on, let me turn this off real quick. Make this thing a roller in the next day or so. I'm still waiting on some stuff that's coming in from overseas, and before that comes in, I can't really start the car because they're coolant hoses. It's an entire coolant hose kit. And so this is going to get put to the side for a little bit, and then we're probably going to start doing some work on this dusty old girl. Just got the missing puzzle piece to do the hydro conversion, which I'm really excited to finish up. And then we'll be getting into this thing that's been here for entirely too long and really needs to get worked on. So that'll be coming up, but let's go ahead and get back into this guy. Alright, we've got 4 motor mounts installed. To get this one out, I had to take the power steering pump out of the way just to have room to fish it out. But I think that that will be a good time to do all of the belts. So I'm going to do that after I finish locating these mounts. This one is mostly in, it just needs to be tightened. These guys are loose, but the one on the back here is still fighting me with one bolt hole. This one back there. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of that on and get the engine exactly where it needs to be. At least now it's not all teeter-tottery. It's actually hanging out where it's supposed to. But since I still have a little bit of play, I left the bolts hand tight on that. And on this one, that one's tightened fully but has a good range of motion. It'll allow me to get that back one, tighten everything, torque it up to spec, keep the ball rolling. Let's get at it. All right, after entirely too much effort, I was able to get these belts on. I actually ended up taking off the radiator, which is right there, just because it was easier to work on all this stuff with it out. Whoever designed this stuff did not make it easy, but belts are on, tension, tightened, everything on the drive system is good to go. All the motor mounts are done. I got the cross beam from front subframe to rear subframe underneath the engine all set. We got the mounts in, batteries just kind of loosely in place because it'll probably need a good charge before we get the car running. And I still have the little weight to go on the top of that rear motor mount, which is right here with new hardware. And then I do have a new VTEC solenoid gasket, OEM Honda, because these do have a little filter in them that tends to get clogged. This engine is 20 some years old, and it did have a little bit of buildup inside of it, so I'm going to go ahead and take off the VTEC solenoid, replace that. I did the O-ring for the dipstick tube at the bottom because that was leaking. I got new hardware on the half shaft. Yeah, slowly but surely making a bunch of progress. I'm going to go ahead and get this radiator put back in. I'm going to do the VTEC solenoid gasket, put that stuff on that motor mount, and just wrap up all this little stuff. This pile of parts is getting smaller and smaller, which is a great sign. So yeah, continue and see where we end up. Radiator's back on, heat shield's just in there right now. It looks awesome. Can't wait to put the valve cover on it, make it really look over the top after the manifold's all cleaned up and valve cover's on. It's gonna look great. I'm gonna try to find some better hardware because the hardware that is on it is pretty gross. So I'm gonna go through my baggie of OEM stuff, see if I can find some nice zinc coated hardware. I should have something in there. If not, I'll go get some stainless steel stuff. And then people tend to say that, you know, buying a bunch of OEM parts and replacing stuff like this is overkill, but I want to go ahead and take off the VTEC solenoid. Found the bolts have been tampered with. This is a bunch of high temp RTV, and this is very common in Japanese import engines. I don't know why they love this stuff over there, but they do, and they put it on threads, which doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. And the gasket is disgusting. Look at that thing. Super built up with crud. The thing is flat. It's not very pliable. So yeah, I think this would have been an issue. I think VTEC would not have engaged properly. It wouldn't have seen proper oil pressure going through the solenoid. So I'm happy I spent the money and went ahead and did this, because little stuff like this is where you start chasing your tail. You know, again, this is a 20-some-year-old engine. You don't know its history. Yeah, it's got good compression. Yeah, it's got, you know, a decent bill of health, but you never really know who did what with it when it was halfway across the world. And going through it before putting it in will save you a lot of headache, a lot of heartache chasing your tail after you did all this work for a car that doesn't work properly. And that's why I just go through everything the first time, do it all while it's out of the car. It's easier. And then, you know, once you put it in, you're done. You don't have to mess with it for a long time, hopefully. So yeah, gonna put this back together, and then probably try to find some hardware for this heat shield here. Yep, that one. And then maybe start messing with some manifold stuff. So yeah, get into it. All right, went ahead and bolted this down, found some nice zinc coated hardware that makes that look very nice and OEM. VTEC solenoid is on. I actually took the one out of the bad engine because this one's got the green pressure switch, which is favorable to have. The JDM engines don't come with it. The USDM cars do. There is a way to wire around it where basically you just tell it that it's always on. But I like to have it because if for whatever reason your engine's consuming oil and there's no oil pressure, it won't try to kick in VTEC, which could kind of save your engine. It's also a good thing when you know you're at an RPM where you should be hitting VTEC and it doesn't. You should probably check the oil because you probably don't have very good oil pressure. And that's actually what my buddy Lester, he's got a yellow Integra with a B18C Type R, and that's how he knows he has to top off his oil is, hey, VTEC didn't engage. You know, it's kind of a fail-safe. Not the best way to have a fail-safe, but definitely is one. So went ahead and threw that in because why not? You know, we got it. So I think now we're going to get rid of this ugly thing and show you this guy. So went ahead and did wrinkle black, timeless classic look, polished letters, and we're going to go ahead and throw it in. So let's see how it looks. Damn, look at that thing. Well, it looks amazing. I love this classic timeless look of the wrinkle with the polished letters and the NGK wires. Beautiful contrast there. I did throw the intake manifold on. It's not even tight. And as much as it looks like it's about ready to run, we still don't have a fuel system in it. I have to send injectors out to get cleaned. I got a new fuel filter ready to go in. We don't have any of the fuel lines connected. We don't have throttle linkage on. We still have to do all the vacuum plumbing. We still have to do the coolant system plumbing. I'm waiting on a package to redo every single coolant hose in this thing, so that's not an issue in the future. Still have intake duct to finish. Still have electrical harness, which is completely off this thing. That needs to get cleaned up and installed. So there's still a good bit to get done on this thing, but it's looking like a car. It's looking great under this hood. It's definitely a lot cleaner than it was when I started. I don't know if you've seen all of the gunk all over the floor and all over my workbench. to give you an idea of the stuff that's been coming off this thing. That was a brand new brush when I started. So yeah, I'm glad that it's finally taking shape. But I think this is where I'm going to end it for this one. And it'll probably be a couple of weeks before you see another video on this thing. I'm going to wait until everything is in to get it all knocked out, get it running, and get it dialed. So probably end up doing some of this next. Probably some other fit stuff. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.